Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Ichigo awoke his true powers. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name in the description below. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 8, Hueco Mundo PT1, Wrath of the Protector. I'm sorry for being a bother. Nell gasped through the shallow breaths. Don't talk, young lady. Tessai hushed her and wiped a sweat from his brow. Ever since the green-haired Arrancar showed up on the doorsteps of the Urahara's shop and fainted just after walking in, Tessai has been trying to heal her most grave injuries, although he was getting nowhere and slightly desperate. Nothing he has done till now worked on the Arrancar. And I am supposed to be the captain of Kido Corps. He cursed himself mentally and concentrated again. Urahara was sitting next to him with a frown on his face, hidden behind his fan. He wasn't worried about the patient as he was sure that she would get better in no time. No, he was worried about the reaction of one young, substitute Shinigami, who was probably on his way right now. Maybe I shouldn't have let Yoruchi get him. We should have solved this without him. From what I heard, this girl is precious to him, and if he sees her like this, oh boy. The only thing that the shopkeeper was able to get out of Nell was the fact that while they were trying to live in Las Noches, they were attacked last night. After she managed to stutter that out, she fainted again. He turned his head when he heard some loud noise. Where is she? Urahara-san. Where the fuck are you? Angry voice of Ichigo Kurosaki entered the room in which they were trying to heal Nell. Oh boy indeed. Urahara thought and quickly moved from his position in front of the doors. His action probably saved him some bruises, as a moment after that, the doors were kicked down and he noticed orange hair. He immediately moved to calm the teen down, but after he noticed Ichigo's stare, he gulped and uncharacteristically didn't say anything. No way. Ichigo thought when he entered the room and got a good look at the childish Arrancar that helped him so much. Nell. He whispered and kneeled next to her. With his jaws clenched, he had to gain control of his own stomach when he took a closer look at her. She was a mess. Her clothes were ripped apart and were only covering her modesty. She was missing half of her left leg to the knee, with deep gashes on the other one, and was bleeding profusely. There was a gaping hole, at least a few inches in diameter, at the center of her stomach, and Ichigo could swear that he could see the ground she was lying on through it. As if it wasn't enough, she was spurting bruises all over, her lips were busted, and she was bleeding from a small wound above her eyebrows. The worst were her arms. They were both broken, bones protruding from the wrists, showing their white color to all of them. Jesus fucking. Ichigo bit his lip, keeping himself from bursting from rage. His Ryatsu was already flowing heavily through the air, wildly heating it with its fiery nature. He clenched his fists and turned to Tessai. How is she? He asked the Kido master. Said person shook his head in frustration. She's in bad condition, my Kido isn't working for some reason. I healed wizards in the past, so I thought that I could heal Arrancars too, but it seems I can't. Ichigo closed his eyes and tried to calm down. Move. He said to Tessai and put his hands on Nell's stomach. The ex-captain wanted to protest, but he noticed Yoruchi, who was standing behind Ichigo, shaking her head. So he moved away and watched the teen with a curious expression. She can't die, she won't die. Ichigo thought and began to draw upon his hollow energy. After a minute, he had to close his eyes, as seeing Nell so beaten up was disturbing his concentration. When nothing happened for several minutes and the only thing that could be heard were Nell's gasps of breath, Urahara wanted to interrupt, but a sudden surge of Ryatsu flowed into Ichigo's hands, so he sat back down. Don't you dare, Nell. Hang in there. Ichigo thought and pushed more of his energy into her. Small bead of sweat was starting to form on his brow. Damn, doesn't she possess high-speed regeneration or what? Ichigo thought, alarmed when nothing happened after 2 more minutes. When he wanted to call out to her, he heard a small gasp, different from the one she was making till now. He dared to open his eyes, and with a relieved sigh he noticed that the tissue damage in the bones in her arms were slowly repairing itself, and the missing leg was slowly starting to form new bone and muscles around it. After a few more moments, Nell tiredly blinked and her eyes darted around herself in confusion. When she noticed Ichigo's concerned face hovering above her, his brow crooked in concentration, a small smile formed on her face. "Hey, Ichi," she said in a weak voice. "Hey yourself," Ichigo replied quietly. "Ichi?" Yoruchi thought in irritation. "Oh, I see something amusing." Urahara grinned after noticing Yoruchi's mouth twitching. Tensai only shook his head and glanced at Ichigo. "Full of surprises as always, Ichigo-san. How are you feeling, Nell?" Ichigo asked her in concern. She just smiled at him, but then her eyes widened as she remembered the reason she came to the world of the living in the first place. She tried to sit down, but a sharp pain halted her actions and she grunted in pain. "Easy there, girl. You're still in bad shape," Yoruchi called to her. Ichigo helped her to lie down again and stared at her. "What's going on, Nell? What happened to you?" He noticed that she clenched her fists and tears formed in her eyes. "Nell?" he asked in alarm. "Remember when you told us to go back to Las Noches and live there together?" she said suddenly. "Yeah." Ichigo looked at her in confusion. "We did, and we even found Grimjo lying in a pool of his own blood. We managed to save him though, and for the past few days, we finally had some peace, although we were getting worried about Lillinette." She trailed off and looked at the ceiling. Others were patiently waiting for her to continue. She blinked and cleared her throat. "Last night, we were attacked. It was so sudden, we didn't know what was happening. I mean, Harabel should be the strongest person in Hueco Mundo right now, so we thought that no one would dare to go near us. But in the middle of the night a horde of Ajuchas showed up in front of Las Noches and were trying to kill us." Ichigo widened his eyes and his hand shook with rage. "How dare they? Normally, it wouldn't be that much of a problem. Me and Harabel are Arankars, one of the top ex-Espada, and before Aizen came, we were Vasto Lord. The others were only Ajuchas, but the Hogyoku gave us a little more power in our evolution. So we could have probably taken on 10 Ajuchas by ourselves." She coughed and Urahara quickly handed her a glass of water. After she refreshed herself, she continued. "But I would have never thought that so many Ajuchas could work together. There were maybe 30 of them at the beginning, and I think I saw a Vasto Lord commanding them." She finished and the trio exchanged astonished looks. "How is that even possible?" Yoruchi turned to Urahara, who, for once, looked completely clueless as others did. "I don't think that's all." Nell surprised them further. "What do you mean?" Urahara asked and glanced at Ichigo, who looked like he was keeping himself from running to Hueco Mundo right away. "I didn't have enough time to think about it, but I never saw Vasto Lord in charge of Ajuchas before. Not to mention that Ajuchas themselves wouldn't blindly obey somebody. I think that someone else is behind it. But that's enough, I need to go back. Only with luck I managed to get here so I could try to call for some help. Others are still in danger. I think that Harabel was the only one left who could fight. And there were still so many of them." She went silent and wiped her tears. Ichigo looked at her and stood up abruptly. "Is there anything else I should know, Nell?" he asked in a neutral voice. She looked up and shook her head. "Ichigo?" Yoruchi asked and tried to move to him when they all felt his heavy Ryatsu pushing them down. "I'm going there, alone. I don't want you to see what I'm about to do," he said with his turned head, keeping them from seeing his face. He quickly ripped the air and opened a small garganta, and before anyone could do anything he jumped in with the portal closing on him. Yoruchi was the first one to recover and she tried to grab his leg. "No! Ichigo, wait!" she yelled and her heart shook when, in the last moment, she got a good look at his face. There wasn't any cute frown on it, nor a kind, warm smile that he could show her. There was only rage and pure hatred written all over it. His eyes betrayed nothing and she could see that he was prepared to wipe out everybody who hurt his friend. "Ichigo!" She closed her eyes and prayed for his safety. "Wait! You said your name was Urahara-san, right?" We have to go after him," Nell exclaimed and turned to the shopkeeper, who shook his head. "No. You can't go. Your body is still recovering, and trust me. I know Kurosaki-san enough to know that he wouldn't want you to see the things he's about to do. Additionally, he can take care of himself. I can't imagine anybody that could defeat him right now." Nell gaped at him and glanced at the place where Ichigo ran into Garganta. "Don't lose yourself, Ichigo, not for me," she thought, and with a heavy heart lied down on the futon. Boss, did you feel his Ryatsu too? It's changed and I don't know if I'm right, but it almost seems like it was heating the very air around him," Tessai said with concern. Urahara nodded and frowned. "So he's starting to develop even further. I don't think his human body will be able to take it after all." Ichigo was seeing red as he was sprinting through the black nothingness of Garganta. Just the memory of seeing tears on Nell's face made him clench his fists so hard, he almost drew blood. How dare they? He thought again and pushed himself to run faster. He almost tripped, however, when he heard Zangetsu talking to him. "Calm down, Ichigo. You'll need to be able to think straight in the upcoming fight. You can't just blitz in and kill everybody." Ichigo closed his eyes. "I know that, but right now, my emotions are stronger than my reason." He heard something that closely resembled sigh. "Well then get ready, because there is something else you need to know, Ichigo. Right now, you are unable to use your Bankai." "What?" Ichigo mentally yelled. "Ichigo, you finally released the true power of your Zanpakuto. The old Bankai is something you won't see again, and therefore you have to earn your Bankai again. It won't be like last time, but you won't get it for free either. There are also some things you need to know first," Zangetsu said, making Ichigo almost stop in his tracks. "What are you talking about, Zangetsu?" Ichigo asked in frustration. "Wait. That means I can't use my Resurrection either. Damn, Zangetsu. I'm going against Ajuchas and probably even against Vastlord. I am fully aware of that, Ichigo. But it is time for you to understand something. In the past you were relying too heavily on your Bankai. It'll be different this time. Do you think that Captain Commander uses his Bankai for small fries like that?" Zangetsu asked in a calm voice. Ichigo widened his eyes comically. "Are you comparing me with freaking Captain Commander? The guy who has been a Shinigami for 1,000 years? Are you fucking kidding me?" he yelled in disbelief. "Yes, he may have been a Shinigami for 1,000 years if not more, but he isn't you either. Your potential is limitless, Ichigo. You have something that nobody in this world has. Your powers are a combination of every possible power in this universe. You can, and trust me, you will be the most powerful being in this world." Zangetsu surprised him suddenly. Ichigo shook his head. "That's impossible, nobody has limitless potential," Aizen himself said it, but fine. "I don't have time for this. More importantly, are you really serious that I can only use my Shirkai? I may be strong and I'm not scared, but the thought of being able to use only that much power worries me a little bit. What if I can't save them in time with only Shirkai?" Ichigo turned his head and stared at the dark surroundings. "To be honest with you, Ichigo, I don't care," Zangetsu said frankly, this time making Ichigo trip in shock. He managed to recover in a split second and ran again. "Well, what do you mean, Zangetsu?" "I don't care if you can't save them, Ichigo. Yes, I'd be sad, because it would inevitably bring you despair. But my main reason for aiding you is because I want to protect you, Ichigo. You yourself is the only thing you don't want to protect, that's why someone else has to do it for you." Ichigo's shocked face twisted itself into a small and honest smile. He inhaled deeply and felt a tear in his eye. "Thank you, Zangetsu. Even if I disagree with you and even if I'm angry with you right now, it means a lot to me." He shook his head to clear his thoughts as he noticed that he was slowly getting close to the end of his Garganta. With his mind set on the task before him, he sped to the exit. "I only hope that you'll feel the same way after you learn the truth, Ichigo," Zangetsu thought sadly. I have to applaud you, Tyr Harabel, and your fallen comrades, to be able to defeat so many of my subordinates. You managed to impress me. There were only 6 of you and yet you managed to dispose of nearly 20 or so of my ajuches. Impressive indeed. But your pointless struggle ends now. Harabel watched in anger as the masked face of the Vasto Lord in front of her twisted itself into an evil smirk. I would have never thought that I was this weak. I'm sorry, girls. She thought and closed her eyes as she felt the Vasto Lord forming his Siro, pointing it at her head. It's over. He yelled and released his Siro. My master will surely be pleased. He thought with a grin, which faded instantly as the smoke from the explosion cleared itself. In front of the fallen ex-espada stood a Shinigami with orange hair, holding up his sword in front of him. What? He blocked my Siro? Who are you? Vasto Lord yelled in anger. Koro, Saki? Halabel gasped in surprise. Ichigo ignored the screaming hollow and turned his head to her. His first reaction after seeing her covered in blood was anger, but when his eyes found hers, he offered her a warm smile. Yo! I thought I would stop by to check how you guys were doing. Seems like I made it just in the right time, huh? He grinned and sent a wink at her. She remained silent and let the consciousness slowly leave her. After she closed her eyes, Ichigo turned his head back to the vast lord in front of him. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath to calm himself. Are you the one who did this to them? He asked and tried to feel the Ryatsu of the others. His eyes widened when he felt Grinjo's Ryatsu and realized it was flickering. Damn it! I need to finish this quickly. I may not like him, but I'd be damned if I let him die. Not on my watch. It was done by my subordinates, but never mind that. I ask you again. Who are you, Shinigami? I'd ask what's your name, but I don't think I need to hear it. You'll be purified along with others when I'm done with you all. Ichigo retorted and ignored the question when he noticed that the remaining ajuches started to surround him. 6, 7, 8, 9, so I guess Harabel and the others defeated 21 of them. But there will be none after I'm finished. Ichigo mentally counted the numbers of opponents and readied himself. The Vasto Lord grimaced. You think you can take on us alone? You are way too arrogant, Shinigami. Kill him. The ajuches quickly listened and closed the distance between them and Ichigo. Too slow. Ichigo thought and flashed next to the closest two and swung his blade at them. The one who resembled a bat managed to jump away in time, only to gain a small gash on his leg, but his comrade wasn't as lucky and his head fell on the ground with his body slowly disintegrating. When the others saw that, they screamed in anger and jumped at him. Ichigo had to flash away to avoid being impaled through his stomach and his head. With a clang, he parried the attack of the ajuches with the appearance of a mantis and sword-like arms. When he sensed an incoming attack from behind, he jumped backwards and started to gather his hollow energy in mid-air. Vasto Lord's face showed surprise when he felt it. Siro! Ichigo whispered, and from the tip of his finger a bright red Siro erupted, obliterating the ajuches below him. 2 down, 7 more to go. What is he? No-name Vasto Lord thought after witnessing Ichigo's Siro. His eyes suddenly widened in recognition. Wait. He must be the one Master mentioned. In that case, I'll probably have to fight him myself. He grinned sadistically and for the time being, watched the fight. Ichigo was slowly getting overwhelmed. Sure, he managed to defeat 2 ajuches almost right away, but the remaining ones started to work together, after seeing what he was capable of. They were more careful in their approach and they were covering each other's backs. This is really weird. I never thought that they could really work together. Ichigo thought and had to quickly duck under a swipe of a tiger like ajuches. He spun himself, trying to cut off its head, but a bear like ajuches deflected his sword. He grimaced in frustration and jumped backwards a little, putting some distance between ajuches and himself. It's time I use Zangetsu's true powers in a fight. He thought and held up his Zanpakuto in front of him. Set the darkness ablaze, Zangetsu! He yelled and a burst of black Ryatsu exploded around him, creating a small shockwave, pushing the Ajuchas back and surprising the Vasto Lord with his heavy Ryatsu and its dark nature. The Ajuchas looked at each other and started to back away from him a little. Even they could feel the difference in power.
You think I'll let you get away with the things you did to my friends, and Grimmjow?
Ichigo muttered darkly and his eyes glowed with Ryatsu. He gathered the needed energy into his blade and flashed to his opponents, closing the distance in an instant.
And Jutsu no Ka! He exclaimed and let the flames rush at the surprised bear-like Ajuchas who couldn't evade in time.
When the dark flames hit him, his eyes almost rolled in his head instantly from the incredible pain. Everybody else watched as his mouth opened and he screamed in agony. After a few seconds, the previously incoherent screams turned into words, as the black flames created visions, only for him to see.
No, stop it. Stop the voices, Ga.
Remaining Ajuchas looked at him in horror as he started to claw his own flesh from his head in desperation as the voices inside of his head and the visions he was experiencing were getting stronger.
Why did you do it, mister?
A childish humanoid hollow entered his vision. With its limbs broken it slowly crawled to him.
Daddy, why me? Wasn't I a good daughter?
From his right, a small girl walked to him, blood flowing from under her pink skirt. She had empty eyes and a lifeless expression. The Ajuchas screamed again and tried to move away when they reached him and started to rip his flesh away. A blood-curdling scream was heard and the Ajuchas plucked his own eyes, heavily bleeding but still screaming. Even if he wanted to punish every single one of them, Ichigo had to turn his head away from the sickening scene as the Ajuchas, bleeding all over from Ichigo's attack and from its own hands, tried to pounce on his head to stop its visions. With a final blow, it crushed its own skull and stopped screaming, dead at last.
Oh man, I think I'm gonna be sick, this is awful.
Ichigo thought and tried to hold the contents of his stomach. The power of dark flames isn't something that should be enjoyable. It serves as a harsh punishment for everyone.
That you find it disgusting is probably a good thing. If it brought you pleasure, well, I wouldn't be happy. Zangetsu told him quietly.
Ichigo shuddered at the very thought of somebody being able to enjoy this kind of scene and focused on the remaining Ajuchas, who were frozen from the disgusting scene. His mind was still unsettled when he witnessed the disturbing effects of his own power, but he decided not to dwell on it too much. After all, it was his power and he was sure as hell wasn't going to push them away. If he was the one who could ultimately punish sick bastards, well, he was okay with it. Still, it disturbed him a little. He slowly walked to Ajuchas, which seemed to wake them up from their shock. When they noticed Ichigo slowly approaching them, with dark Ryatsu surrounding him, they tried to crawl away from him, tripping on their own claws.
The voice of the Vasto Lord stopped them in their tracks.
You worthless trash, you see one weird thing and you are scared shitless.
Do you really want me to report this to the master? He yelled, making them gulp heavily and stop their movements. Master? Ichigo thought in confusion.
The threat worked and the Ajuchas hesitantly readied themselves. Ichigo himself got into stance and as they charged him, he ducked under the first one, sidestepped the second one slashing backwards, where he hit one of them, making a deep gash in the Ajuchas' stomach. His senses screaming at him, he put his blade in front of him, blocking incoming attack just in time. He threw the gorilla-like Ajuchas off him when his eyes widened. Remaining 4 hollows were already finished with charging their joint zero. As the beam of energy rapidly approached Ichigo, he quickly slashed with his Zanpakuto down.
Yami no Tsukitate!
He yelled and a dark shield emerged in front of him, stopping the zero in its path, creating a small explosion that engulfed him and the 2 Ajuchas still standing behind him. Something tells me he's not finished.
Vasto Lord mumbled.
He didn't miss the flames that formed a wall in front of Ichigo just as the zero closed on him.
Phew, that was one hell of a zero. Ichigo thought mentally.
When the smoke cleared, the Ajuchas that shot the zero at him looked at him in horror. There was absolutely no injury on him, but the 2 hollows that were caught in the explosion were severely burned and barely breathing.
Ichigo turned to them and contemplated about their fate.
He could have left them to suffer or he could finish them off. The image of beaten Nell entered his mind and for the first time in his life, Ichigo turned away from someone in pain and let them suffer. They deserve it. He thought and mentally dared Zangetsu to disagree with him.
They do. Zangetsu answered him immediately, but his face showed a little concern. Ichigo flashed to the remaining 4 Ajuchas and instantly beheaded one of them. Its body disintegrated even before its skull landed on the ground. As the others tried to evade his next swing, the flames around Ichigo started to burn more, slowly creeping their way around him. From the moment the image of Nell settled in his mind, rage started to flow through him again. With his eyes glowing with Ryatsu, he charged at and kicked the closest Ajuchas with Ryatsu-induced kick, jumping slightly, when he noticed claws entering his vision. As he dodged a kick, he spun himself in the air, surprising the hollow who tried to kick him, bisecting him instantly. Its blood splashed on his clothes, but he paid it no attention. Using his momentum, he kicked from the ground, reaching the last Ajuchas, aiming a punch at his gut. Pumping some of his Ryatsu to his fist, he hit the hollow below its hole, ripping through its flesh. "Now you have a second hole," he commented coldly, and let some of the flames that run along his arm reach the hollow, causing him to scream in agony and drop dead in a matter of seconds. He turned his head to look at the Ajuchas he kicked a moment ago and saw it slowly scrambling back at its feet. Without giving him a chance to get ready to defend himself, Ichigo flashed to him and plunged his Zanpakuto through his chest, pinning him to the ground with a sickening squelch and killing him instantly. With blood still on his hand, Ichigo turned his head to the Vasto Lord, who was getting a bit nervous from the eerie feeling he was feeling after witnessing Ichigo killing his subordinates like they were flies. As the black flames started to cover Ichigo's whole body, the Vasto Lord took an unconscious step back. Something was telling him that the person in front of him wasn't someone he would want to underestimate. He drew his own blade he got from some Shinigami his master killed in the Minos forest and waited for a moment, before disappearing in a buzzing sound that signaled Sonido. Ichigo managed to notice him in time and blocked the incoming slash, skidding a few inches back. "So he's strong, good, someone I can finally test myself against." Ichigo grinned and jumped above the hollow, spinning himself and the sword in midair, trying to cut through the Vasto Lord's skull. The humanoid narrowly blocked the surprising attack and pushed Ichigo from him. The substitute Shinigami landed a few meters behind him and immediately pushed himself from the ground, aiming a jab at the hollow. Said person sidestepped him and slashed at him with his second hand with claws on it. Sensing an incoming attack, Ichigo ducked and managed to kick him in the skull, sending the hollow flying but also almost breaking his leg. "Fuck!" He cursed mentally and charged the Vasto Lord, who landed after crashing into the ground. His eyes widened, however, when he sensed a huge amount of hollow energy in front of him, and only his reflexes saved him from the incoming Zero. He turned his head in horror, however, when he realized where the hollow's attack continued. "No! Harabel!" Cursing his own stupidity, he pushed himself, trying to outrun the Zero. "Damn it, I was getting too caught up in the fight." It was only then when he noticed his bloody attire and the blood on his hands. "Oh God, I ripped a hole through that hollow with my own fist." He gulped in realization of his own cruel actions. With the Zero reflecting in his eyes, he turned his focus back on stopping it and jumped in front of Harabel, having only a moment before the attack collided with him. "Fuck, no time for the shield." He cursed and held up his blade in front of him, desperately trying to block it somehow. The Zero was, however, on another level in the comparison with the one the Ajuchas shot at him or the one he blocked when he arrived. It was too heavy for him to block it with just his sword, and he again cursed his own stupidity. In a desperate attempt, he pumped as much Ryatsu to his own skin as he could and hoped that he would survive. After a few more seconds of trying to hold back the energy, he was engulfed in an explosion for the second time. The Vasto Lord buzzed near the origin of the explosion and waited. He still wasn't sure if that ended the Shinigami. He grimaced when the wind blew the smoke away. Ichigo was still standing with his attire burned heavily, showing his bare torso with tribal tattoo. Thanks to his attempt to lessen the effects of the Zero with his own Ryatsu, he managed to escape the worst of the explosion and received only light burns on his hands that were already healing, using his high-speed regeneration. "You impress me, Shinigami. Not many can survive my Zero, not to mention with only this much damage." Hollow admitted not so happily. Ichigo gasped a little. He spent a good amount of his reserves to block the Zero. "Shit!" He cursed and gripped the sword tightly. "No more games. I have to finish this." Grimjow is almost dead and the others aren't better.
He suddenly flashed away from the Hollow's vision in an impressive show of speed.
Vasto Lord widened his eyes in surprise when he felt his arm being severed and quickly jumped away. Gah!
He grunted in pain as the blood sprayed from the wound. He glanced at his arm and grimaced in pain as he felt his high-speed regeneration slowly kick in. What was that speed? He was fast before, but not like this. He thought about his chances when a heavy Ryatsu pressed on his shoulders, widening his eyes further. He turned his head and his eyes landed on Ichigo, who was slowly walking towards him, his remaining clothes floating as the air itself was getting heavy with his Ryatsu. I'm going to end this now, Hollow.
I don't have time to play with you anymore.
Ichigo said coldly.
Play with me? Don't tell me, he was holding back the entire time? The Vasto Lord's eyes glowed as the realization fell on him and he gulped.
The air was starting to get hotter as Ichigo approached him, and after calculating his chances of survival, the Hollow almost wanted to retreat.
But how could he escape with his life intact?
Then he blinked when he remembered something his master told him about his subordinates. Yes, that could work, I just need some diversion. As Ichigo was almost in front of him, he finally formed his plan and got into stance. Ichigo squirmed his eyes, trying to figure out what was Hollow planning. He immediately went to create his shield when he saw Vasto Lord forming a Zero.
It's pointless, you can't defeat me with it when I know it's coming.
Ichigo yelled at the Hollow, who smirked, making Ichigo suddenly wary.
How do you know I'm aiming at you, Shinigami? Flash of realization went through Ichigo's eyes and he cursed again.
He saw the Zero being shot in the direction of Grimjow and he quickly flashed in front of it with his shield prepared.
Yami no Tsukitate.
His shield managed to block the Zero with little difficulty.
What was he thinking? He thought in confusion. Looking for someone, Shinigami?
Hollow's voice made him turn his head. Vasto Lord was kneeling next to one of the Ajuchas Ichigo left to die in pain, touching it slightly with one of his claws.
What are you doing? Ichigo asked warily.
The Hollow smirked, creating a feeling of dread inside Ichigo's stomach.
Do you know why I was bestowed with these subordinates? Why am I even here? Vasto Lord grinned cruelly and jabbed his finger inside the Ajucha's stomach. It's because these Ajuchas are special. They were modified a little. I just put an energy equal to more than one of my Zero inside of him. Do you know what happens after a few moments? Boom.
The Hollow whispered sadistically.
Think of the explosion.
I don't think your friend over there will be able to survive alone. He pointed at Harabel, who was lying only a short distance from them. Ichigo looked at him in horror. I don't think you will finish me, Shinigami.
But know this. We will meet again, and when we do, you'll be on your knees, begging me to finish you off.
Vasto Lord grinned and flashed away, leaving Ichigo frozen for a second. When he noticed the glowing Ajuchas, however, Ichigo quickly acted and left the thought of pursuing the Hollow alone and flashed next to Harabel. He wrapped his arms around her and jumped away just as the Ajuchas exploded, creating a shockwave and sending him flying through the air and crashing into the walls of Las Noches painfully. Fortunately, he managed to flip himself while in the air, so that the only one injured would be him and not Harabel. He groaned a little as he pushed himself from the ground. His back hurt and he suspected that the blast managed to burn him a little. How ironic, my power is fire-based and yet I am burned. Sending his hollow energy to the wound, he sighed in relief as the high-speed regeneration kicked in. He placed Harabel on the ground and grimaced. He wanted to help her first, but he panicked when Grimjow's Ryatsu flickered from existence, leaving only a weak pulse. Shit. With an impressive speed, he flashed to the blue-haired Arankar and took a good look at him. He looks like shit. Grimjow was missing his entire left arm, from the shoulder down. One of his ears was missing too, a bone was protruding from his leg and deep gashes ran along his chest, similar to the one Ichigo himself gave him not that long ago, but these were way more life-threatening. He could almost see his ribs through one of the wounds. Quickly putting his hands on him, he channeled his hollow energy and pushed a good amount to him. It took significantly less time for his high-speed regeneration to take effect as it did with Nell.
Maybe every hollow has a different speed of regeneration. Ichigo thought in wonder. Ichigo. I'm glad you're back to yourself. Zangetsu sighed in relief. Yeah, me too, Zangetsu, me too. Inside his mind, Zangetsu shook his head. No, you don't understand, Ichigo. It's not as simple as you think it is. You didn't become just too caught up in the fight, you were getting caught up in your own darkness. Zangetsu said with a little worry in his voice. Ichigo raised his eyebrow, but continued to focus on giving his energy to Grimmjow. The power of your Zanpakuto is darkness, and as I said before, it can't hurt you, but it can possess you, Ichigo. It's a terrifying power and you must be careful in using it. I know that your emotions are something that you have a problem keeping in check, but your rage and hatred fuels the darkness you wield. It helps you strengthen your abilities, but you'll have to find your equilibrium or the darkness will control you. Zangetsu explains sadly. Yeah, it did occur to me that it was strange that the more rage I felt, the more those flames kept surrounding me and they were easier to control. I wanted to kill them, Zangetsu. I wanted to rip them apart with my bare hands. You saw what those bastards did to Nell, Harabel, and others. They are animals. Ichigo replied, ashamed of his own feelings. I understand, Ichigo. It's the same thing with me wanting to protect you. You want to protect those around you, and when you're late and they get hurt, you want to punish those who did it. I agree with you, I'm just warning you, do not let yourself get lost in the darkness. Never. Ichigo closed his eyes and mentally nodded. I promise. It was then, when he heard a groan from the one he was giving energy to. He quickly pulled his hands back as he knew Grimmjow's nature. Said Arankar slowly opened his eyes and noticed Ichigo. You! Kuro Arg! Grimmjow almost jumped at Ichigo, but his injuries prevented him from doing it and he yelped in pain instead. Yes, me, Grimmjow. Be still and let your high-speed regeneration work, I gave you just enough of my hollow Ryatsu to patch you up. If you have any problem with it or with me in general, leave it for later. I have to help others. Ichigo said sharply and stood up, but Grimmjow grabbed his leg before he could flash away. Kurosaki, this is the second time you saved my life, but know this, I still hate you and I will try to kill you again. Nothing's changed. I may be grateful that you got rid of Aizen, but that's it. Grimmjow gasped through small spasms of pain. Fine with me. I don't want you to owe me anything. But if we are to fight again, don't drag anyone else into it, and in that case I'll fight you whenever you want. Ichigo glanced at the Arankar and nodded to him. Grimmjow widened his eyes a little and let go of Ichigo's leg. What about that green-haired one? Ichigo turned in surprise. Nell? She's okay and in the world of the living. She'll be back soon. Grimmjow nodded, signaling Ichigo to go. He watched him flash through the sand of Hueco Mundo and scoffed. Fucking sucker. Acting almighty and shit, you're lucky I have some pride and you managed to gain a little respect, or I swear I'd have kicked you in the balls the moment I noticed your ugly face. He turned his head and twitched in pain. Fuck it. I'm beat. Ichigo landed next to Harabel and let his eyes roam, trying to find any heavy injury. Surprisingly, the ex-espada had mostly only light injuries, aside from the one that was a little bit hard to look at. Ichigo hadn't noticed it before, when he came to Hueco Mundo and saved the blonde, but now that he had time, he almost couldn't hold his stomach, and with a pure willpower he managed not to throw up. Harabel was missing her entire left breast. It was fully cut off, leaving only a heavily bleeding wound. The injury itself was hard to understand, it was almost as if the one who did it aimed directly at her assets, trying to mutilate her as much as he could. The rest of the injuries were only shallow gashes, bruises, and probably Ryatsu depletion. With his eyes pointing at her legs, trying to avoid the sight of her bloody top, Ichigo put his hands at her stomach and repeated the same process that he did with Grimmjow. Not long after that he heard that disgusting sound of tissue being repaired and dared to lift his eyes a little to see that from the deep wound, her breast started to grow back. He swallowed hard and tiered his focus from the bare lump on her chest to the rest of the injuries.
They too were healing rapidly, and when he was sure he replenished enough of her Ryatsu, he allowed himself a little rest. Repeated donation of his hollow energy was tiring him quite rapidly. I have just enough to heal the other 3 and then I'll need some fine rest. With his eyes closed, he didn't notice that Harabel regained consciousness and was looking at him in confusion. Then she remembered where she was and tried to move. Her movement was the thing that alerted Ichigo.
Oh, you're awake, Harabel-san.
Rest, your reserves were almost fully depleted and I only gave you enough to start your high-speed regeneration. Now that you're awake, I should go to your fraction as they are the last ones who need my help. Why are you here, Kurosaki Ichigo? What of the attack? She asked him just as he stood up. Nell showed up in the world of the living and from her I found out about this, whatever this was. I wanted to beat up the bastards who injured her, and when I got here, well, you remember that much. I managed to kill the rest of the Ajuchas, but the Vasto Lord succeeded in escaping. He gave her a small smile and flashed to the remaining Arankars. But there were still 9 of them left. Harabel mumbled quietly in disbelief when he was already gone. I'll have to find out just how strong he is. She thought and slowly sat, realizing that one of her breasts was showing. She raised an eyebrow when she thought back to the conversation with Ichigo. His eyes never left my face. Is he gay? Not so far away. Ichigo shuddered. I have a sudden feeling that somebody is thinking badly of me. He shook his head to clear his thoughts and concentrated on healing the remaining Arankars. He located them easily and was relieved to discover that while they were all unconscious, their wounds weren't life-threatening. They were most likely suffering from the same thing that Harabel did, Ryatsu depletion. That makes those horrible injuries of Nell, Grimjow, and Harabel more questionable. Did they leave Harabel's fraction with only a few bruises because they thought they were no threat? He frowned and thought about it. It made no sense. The whole attack makes no sense. Why would they attack the most powerful hollows in Hueco Mundo? Why now, after giving them just enough time to recover from the Winter War? Why did they allow Nell to escape? Those were the questions Ichigo asked himself without having any answer. And who is that master? He sighed and wiped his brow from sweat. Well, I can at least think of the reason why Nell was so beaten up. She's too much of a kind person and probably tried to shield the others from injuries, receiving those wounds in the process. Small movement alerted him that 2 of the Arankars he was giving his Ryatsu to were beginning to awaken, so he shifted himself and proceeded to help the last one. As he was finishing, from the corner of his eyes, he noticed that Harabel was already up and coming to check on her fraction, who too were slowly getting up, slightly disoriented. Stubborn woman. He smiled a bit. She's too caring to be considered a hollow. Ugh, damn, I hurt. Mila Rose grunted from the ground behind him. Me too. What, you again? Apache blinked and noticed Ichigo, crouched a few steps away from her. He rolled his eyes and sighed. Yeah, not that you sound very happy. Why should I be happy to see a Shinigami? She retorted and grimaced at him. Because he's the one who saved us, again, and healed us, again. Halibel finally walked to them and sat down next to Ichigo, eyeing him with interest. Ichigo's sweat dropped and unconsciously moved back a little. I don't like her stare. He decided not to mention that out loud. Oh, come on. Don't tell us that he magically appeared in front of you, Lady Harabel, and saved you from being executed, at the last second. Apache exclaimed jovially. When she didn't hear any response, she glanced at Harabel and widened her eyes. No. Freaking way. She said, gobsmacked. Oh my god, my sides, huh? Mila Rose started to laugh uncontrollably at the look on Apache's face, but then she jerked herself in pain. Serves you right, bitch. Apache muttered and turned her head away, her face red from embarrassment. Hey, I didn't just magically appear. Ichigo protested. Nell managed to get to the world of the living and told me about the situation here. I was lucky I got here in time. It's not my fault I arrived exactly at such a time. Wait, you mean Lady Harabel was really about to be? Sun Sung joined the conversation. Mila Rose immediately stopped her laugh at that comment. Yes, their numbers proved too much for me to handle, and I was about to fall when he blocked the zero that was meant for me. The thing is, Kurosaki Ichigo, there were still 9 Ajuchas alive when I fainted. Not to mention that Vasto Lord. You told me you got the Ajuchas, but the Vasto Lord escaped, yet you have almost no injury whatsoever. Ichigo avoided her eyes and looked at the ground. Those Ajuchas weren't that much of a problem since I was, quite frankly, pissed off at them for hurting Nell. I could have taken down even that Vasto Lord, but, well, I admit, he made it so I had to let him escape. I don't understand. Harabel looked at him confused. He rigged one of the Ajuchas' bodies and made some sort of bomb from it. Have I let it explode, you'd be dead. Ichigo glanced at her and shrugged. She widened her eyes a little and looked closer at his attire. So that's why his clothes are so burned. He must have taken the hit for me. He sacrificed himself for me? For the first time since Aizen's betrayal, Harabel allowed herself an honest smile. When she evolved to an Arrancar, her aspect of death became sacrifice. Now she has found someone who was probably the same as her. Yes, him I can trust. Kurosaki-san? Sun tried to gain Ichigo's attention. He rolled his eyes again. Please, no Kurosaki-san, just Ichigo. She smiled a little and nodded. Ichigo-san, then. You said that he blew the body of Ajuchas up, but when Hollow is killed, his body turns into spirit particles quite quickly. Ichigo looked back at the ground, hiding his eyes from their view. I didn't kill every Ajuchas right away. I let some of them suffer and die from their injuries. He said with clenched jaw, refusing to look at those around him. Oh. I see. That's kind of nice of you? Sun stated uncertainty. I mean, you did it because they hurt your friend, right? She quickly added when Ichigo looked at her in surprise. Yeah. He nodded and a small, awkward silence fell on them. What about Nell? Actually, what about Grimmjow? I can feel his Ryatsu but... Harabel broke the silence suddenly. Ichigo scoffed. Kitty boy is fine. He's just angry that I saved his sorry ass again. Nell is with my friend in the world of the living, recuperating from her injuries, but if I'd have to guess, she'll be back here in no time. Harabel's fraction had to stifle a laugh at his new name for Grimmjow. Dixon, Kitty boy, he's on the roll with the nicknames. Mila Rosa snickered quietly. Harabel slowly stood up and looked around. We should get inside. There's no telling if they won't send another attack at us. Her fraction nodded and made their way inside Las Noches while Ichigo glanced at the location of Grimmjow. Let him be. He'll come inside when he wants to. It's not like I'm keeping him here by force. Harabel said to Ichigo and followed her fraction. Ichigo sighed and walked behind her. She raised one eyebrow at his action. I thought you'd be going back to the world of the living? Ichigo chuckled and shook his head. Nah. You're not the only one who thinks that this is not over. We need to come up with a plan on how to deal with this. Before you say anything, this is where Nell and you live, and I consider at least Nell a friend. They can chew on Grimmjow, however. Besides, Nell told me that there is something wrong with that little Arrancar. Lilinette was her name? Harabel stared at him for a moment with a thoughtful expression. After a while she turned around and walked inside Las Noches without any words. Weird. Ichigo thought and entered the massive structure himself. Do you see him? Yeah, are you sure it's a good idea? You heard that he was the one who defeated Aizen. First voice turned in the darkness of Las Noches and stared hard at the second one. We have no other choice. He muttered darkly, and together they followed Ichigo through the shadows. Said Shinigami was walking through the dark corridors, hoping he didn't get lost. Damn, where's Harabel? She was in front of me just a minute ago. Ichigo thought in irritation. Now. Ichigo widened his eyes when he felt a movement behind him and quickly ducked under 2 bodies that flew above him and hit the concrete wall with a painful grunt. What the? Ichigo yelled and spun himself to face the attackers. It took him only a second to recognize the duo that lied there with dazed expressions in front of him.
He facepalmed and shook his head in slight exasperation. Pesh, Dondo Chaka. What are you two dumbass trying to do?
He backed away when Pesh jumped up like nothing happened and grabbed him by the clothes.
You remember my name, Yuryu. He cried anime tears when Ichigo whacked him on the head. I'm Ichigo, you idiot. Yeah?
Pesh's hands shot in the air in surprise. Ichigo rubbed his temples and felt a headache coming.
I ask again. What are you guys doing? We wanted to ask you where Nelsama is.
We didn't see her when Lady Howlibel and her fraction came in, don't tell me she's. Pesh stopped his comic act and gulped in fear.
Ichigo quickly shook his head. No, she's okay.
She's just recuperating in the world of the living with my friends.
She'll be back here in no time. You hear that, Dondo Chaka?
Pesh jumped at his partner and started dancing with him happily, making Ichigo sigh tiredly.
Look guys, not to be party pooper but I'm really tired, can you show me where is the... I don't know how you guys call it, where everybody lives.
Pesh instantly stopped his dance and with a salute he motioned Ichigo to follow him. Turns out, Ichigo wasn't that lost and after a few minutes they arrived in a small hall with a table and a few chairs.
This is where Aizen made his meetings. Harabelle's neutral voice surprised him from behind.
He grimaced and had to suppress the urge to demolish the whole room.
Pesh, Dondenchaka, you can return to your place and wait for Nelson to come back.
I'll take Kurosaki Ichigo with me. Comical duo bowed to her and with a salute left the room.
Come Kurosaki Ichigo, you mentioned that you wanted to see Lillinette.
I'll take you to her.
She glanced at him briefly and walked to the doors on the right.
You know, it'd be easier if you'd call me just Ichigo, you know, and far less irritating. Ichigo stated, muttering the last part quietly. Harabelle turned her head for a second.
Yes, it would.
She replied with a mirth in her eyes and Ichigo could have sworn he saw a ghost smile on her lips.
Eh?
She's in my quarters right now, girls are keeping a watch on her. She said and opened the doors to a huge white room with little furniture, but a lot of noise.
Oh come on Apache, I think it was quite funny, you trying to make fun of him and yet it was that exact way how he came here.
Who would have thought that he was a hero? Ichigo's eyes twitched at Mila Rosa's comment which he was sure was about him.
Fine, but you didn't have to laugh that much.
Apache appeared to be pouting at her comrade with red cheeks.
Sun remained quiet and was often glancing at the only unmoving Arrancar in the room.
How is she, girls? Harabelle asked them and Ichigo had to stifle a laugh when the fraction almost jumped in the air from surprise.
Gah, Lady Harabelle, don't scare us like at.
Mila Rose exclaimed but paused when she noticed Ichigo and flushed a little. Ichigo noticed and waved his hand.
Yes, I heard what you were talking about and it's fine. It's not like I can do something about it.
Apache chuckled a little and stuck her tongue out at Mila Rose who was still flushed.
So, where is Lillinette? Maybe we can figure out together what's wrong with her. Ichigo asked them and frowned when they looked at him in confusion.
Ichigo-san, she's right here. Sun pointed at the figure on the bed next to her and Ichigo widened his eyes in shock.
What was in front of him wasn't a small green-haired Arrancar anymore. The Lillinette that was lying on the bed was slightly different.
Her hair was the same green and her mask was still there, but she was a bit taller, her face showed someone older and her body was a little more girlish with slight curves. Ichigo looked at Harabelle with eyes full of questions.
We don't know either.
It appears she underwent some sort of rapid growth. I'd say she looks maybe 2 years older. I'm thinking that maybe the shock of losing Stark and your Ryatsu, which you gave to her, might have triggered this change. She answered with a slight shrug.
Yeah, when I first saw her, she appeared to be as old as my sisters but now she looks like she's 13 or so,
although I'm sure that since she's Arrancar she's actually older. Ichigo paused when his brain registered something in Harabelle's response and he pointed at himself in shock.
Wait. I did this? Chapter 9, Hueco Mundo PT2, Green Wolf and the Protector. Harabel blinked and looked up at Ichigo.
I didn't say I'm sure of your role in this change.
I'm only guessing. Lilynette was a part of Stark, they used to be one soul. They were unique and that's one of the reasons Aizen recruited them. I don't think even Sail Aparo knew much about them. Maybe Lilynette can enlighten us when she wakes up, she said calmingly.
Ichigo settled down a bit, but one question still bothered him.
There is that. Why won't she wake up?
She's been like this for quite a few days, shouldn't I call for some medics?
I can guarantee you'll be safe. Harabel shook her head.
No, I don't think that any of your Shinigami medics or other ones could help an Arrancar this unique. Maybe your friend that Aizen took hostage and had those amazing powers.
You mean Oraheim?
Well, I could get her. Ichigo replied and immediately turned to the exit, but Harabel stopped him with a frown. Although we could always use something ourselves.
We've been watching Lilynette ever since we came here, and from what I know about medicine.
She paused and stared at him.
What?
Ichigo asked with his own frown. She's suffering from withdrawal symptoms, at least that's what it looks like. Maybe, if you would give her more of your Ryatsu, she'd respond. Harabel told him and motioned him to get closer to Lilynette.
Are you saying she's addicted to my Ryatsu?
Ichigo felt a headache that was slowly creeping at him from the moment he met Pesh and Dandochaka, finally settling in his head.
Harabel shortly nodded. You know, if you're addicted to something, isn't it better to cure the addiction rather than supplying her with the stuff she wants?
Harabel's Frachen were watching them unusually quietly, turning their heads back and forth like they were at some kind of tennis match, not that they knew what tennis was.
Yes, it would be the best solution if it was indeed an addiction. As I said, right now we're not sure of anything and we're only making assumptions. Should she react badly, we'll take her to that Oraheim girl.
But if she wakes up, we might get some answers. Harabel pressed him and Ichigo grudgingly admitted that it was probably the best course of action.
Fine. He nodded and put his hands on Lilynette's stomach. Now that she looks older, she's actually quite cute.
Ichigo thought absent-mindedly and focused once again on his hollow energy. Not wanting to accidentally overdose her, he let his Ryatsu flow into her in small doses, waiting for any kind of reaction. When nothing happened after a few minutes of donating his Ryatsu, Ichigo turned to Harabel. See, she's not dash. He was interrupted by a small groan. Every head snapped in its direction and they watched as the small Arrancar moved a little.
Ha!
You're kidding me, Harabel was right after all, damn women, they are always right.
Ichigo silently fumed.
Stark? Lilynette's voice cut through the silence and Ichigo glanced at Harabel and tried to tell her that he probably shouldn't be there, with hand signs.
Harabel shook her head, making Ichigo sigh. Lilynette blinked and opened her eyes at last. First thing she noticed was the lack of surroundings and the presence of the roof. I'm not on the battlefield.
Next thing was the fact that she could no longer feel Stark's presence. Not his Ryatsu anywhere near her, not the connection that the two of them shared on the soul level.
That worried her greatly.
Instead, she felt several Ryatsu signatures in her close proximity. Besides one, she recognized all of them.
Harabel and her Frachen, and what the hell is with that other Ryatsu?
It's unlike anything I ever felt, and, wait, I'm sure I never felt it before, yet it feels so familiar. She was getting more confused, so she tried to sit down and immediately noticed additional information. First one that surprised her, yet pleased her, was the fact that she was feeling some weight on her chest, so she looked down. Her eyes widened in happy surprise.
I have boobs.
She almost smiled, but then she realized what it probably meant. Without turning to anybody in particular, she asked the whole group, who was watching her changing expressions with interest.
Stark's dead, isn't he? She asked in a dull voice.
Ichigo cringed at her tone.
Yes.
Harabel replied, making Ichigo look at her in horror. She could have shown some solidarity and told her that in a nicer way.
He watched as a single tear dropped from Lilynette's eye.
Poor girl. Ichigo thought in seeing her grim expression, he remembered his sisters and their sad faces when he told them he'd be leaving them for some time.
What about the war? You're alive, but it seems that you're the only one, so I assume we lost? Lillinet asked, still not looking in their direction. We lost, but at the same time won. Aizen was defeated, but thanks to certain someone, we are left alone to live however we like, but shall we try to attack Soul Society again, we will be hunted. Harabel noticed that the small Arrancar clenched her fists. So I'm supposed to live just like that? After those Shinigami killed Stark? She visibly shook from the mixture of grief and rage. Stark wasn't killed by the Shinigami that we fought, Lillinet. Aizen himself cut him down, as he did with me too. In the end, he betrayed us. Harabel quickly replied. Lillinet snapped her head in Harabel's direction with whitened eyes. That bastard. Then her eyes noticed Ichigo, standing a little bit in the background, trying not to be seen. She jumped from the bed and pointed her finger at him. Why is a stinking Shinigami here with us? She yelled at them, but a moment after that she frowned. Wait, he's the one with that weird Ryatsu. What is he? He can't be a Shinigami. Well, whatever he is, he at least looks good. Who is he? She asked Harabel. His name is Kurosaki Ichigo, the one that Aizen stalked and the one who, in the end, defeated the bastard. Lillinet's eyes widened to comic proportions as she fell on her butt. Wait. That broke the tension a little and Harabel's Frachen chuckled a little. Yeah, that was our reaction too, Lillinet. He maybe doesn't look like much, but he can't be pretty scary actually. Mila Rosa smirked at the green-haired girl, who was still gaping at him. Oi, I take offense in that comment. Ichigo finally muttered offended. Oh, don't worry, you're still our hero. Mila Rose blew a raspberry at him and added a wink. Eh? Lillinet watched their exchange with even more widened eyes and with the jaw on the floor. I must have been out for a long time. She muttered and stood up, dusting herself off. Around a week. Harabel told her. It's only thanks to this guy that you woke up, actually. He gave you his hollow Ryatsu. Apache spoke up and Lillinet hastily turned to Ichigo. You have hollow Ryatsu? She asked in shock. Ichigo rolled his eyes. I'm not a normal Shinigami, that's everything you need to know. He said and snorted when she puffed her cheeks at the incomplete answer. Then her mind registered something. Wait, he gave me his Ryatsu? Harabel nodded with a frown. Yes, twice. When he did it this time, he managed to wake you up. That is connected with what I wanted to ask you. As you probably noticed, your appearance has slightly changed and we were contemplating that it's because of Kurosaki Ichigo giving you his Ryatsu. Just in case. Do you know something about it? Lillinet sighed and walked to the bed, where she sat down. Do you know how I knew that Stark was dead? She asked nobody in particular. Partly because I can no longer feel the special connection of our souls, and because I noticed that I grew up a bit. Harabel and others raised their eyebrows. I think you are aware of how I came to exist, right? Me and Stark were once one soul, an extremely strong soul that caused anyone who approached us to die from our Ryatsu alone. That is the reason we decided to split. We split our soul into two pieces and because of that, we lost the ability to grow old. Well, at least I did. I don't know if Stark would grow old in time, but it was clear that I wouldn't. Moreover, I wasn't able to gain more power. Basically, I was stuck in this form until I died. When I saw my boobs, I knew that Stark couldn't be alive because in that case I wouldn't be able to mature. Now that I'm alone, I'm the remaining soul and because of my previously stunted growth I was forced to grow rapidly. Well, it still needed a catalyst in the form of a Ryatsu more potent than Stark's to make it this fast, but since you said that this guy donated his own Ryatsu to me and he's the same person who defeated Aizen, I guess that answers the question. Lillinet looked at Ichigo with interest. But why would a Shinigami, even one not normal, give his Ryatsu to a hollow still confuses me. You're not the only one who's confused right now. Everyone thought. See, it's not your fault Kurosaki Ichigo, as she would grow old in time with or without your intervention. Harabel turned to Ichigo with a light smile. I guess. Ichigo admitted in relief. Fault? You thought that this is something bad? I got boobs, man, boobs.
Lilynette looked at Ichigo as if he was crazy and squeezed her breasts with her own hands experimentally, making Ichigo blush instantly and causing Mila Rose to laugh at him.
Alright.
Lilynette almost squealed in happiness when she remembered that Stark was gone, and she sobered up instantly.
Only if you could see me now, Stark. She thought sadly and turned to others. I think I need to be alone now.
I'll be in Stark's room,
she muttered and quietly made her way out. You think she'll be alright? Ichigo asked Harabelle, after the green-haired Arrancar left the room.
Harabelle glanced at the door and closed her eyes. She's a strong girl, but I guess we'll have to wait.
Not long after Lilynette left, Ichigo himself departed to the long corridors of Las Noches.
Since he decided to help the group deal with the attackers, it meant that he'd be spending a few days in Hueco Mundo.
With that in mind, he asked the ex-espada for the directions to some vacant room, where he could sleep. Harabelle explained to him the route to the old room of the ex-Cuatro Espada, Ulquiorra.
At first, Ichigo rejected the idea.
He was forced to fight the Arrancar, and from that time he knew of his nihilistic character and believed his room to be depressing.
When he found the room, however, the only thing he discovered was that Ulquiorra preferred a simplistic style, similar to the one Harabelle used to decorate her room. So there was Ichigo, lying in the small bed, trying to relax, although his face showed his eternal frown.
Old man, you there?
Yes, Ichigo.
Just so you know, I'm still angry at you. After everything I've been through, I still can't use my Bankai.
Now that we have time, I want to know why, because it screams bullshit to me.
Ichigo asked mentally. I understand, Ichigo.
You already know that when you merged with Shirasaki, you gained quite the power boost, since your hollow powers are now in sync with you. What you, however, don't know is the fact that thanks to that, your hollow powers should have been incorporated within your Bankai.
Since you weren't using the true Bankai, they manifested as an individual release, the Resurrection.
He heard the reply of his inner spirit that made him frown deeper.
But Shirasaki said. Shirasaki is just a part of you, Ichigo. Have you ever seen a Shinigami with more releases than Shirkai and Bankai? The answer is no, and the fact that you're special doesn't change anything. Even if, for example, I didn't want you to be Shinigami, it is the path you chose for yourself, therefore you are a Shinigami. Your other powers are complementary to the main one and they strengthen it.
That's why your Resurrection was only a temporary solution for you to use, until the true power of your Zanpakuto, the core of your Shinigami powers, was awakened. Zangetsu interrupted Ichigo with his explanation, and Ichigo gulped.
That means I'll be even stronger in Bankai? Jesus, well, it's not like I didn't want more power. I needed to protect my precious people, but sometimes I have the feeling that my power will scare people away. That is possible.
However, those closest to you know you better than that, Ichigo.
They know that you are still Ichigo, and not some scary monster. Gee, thanks for calling me a monster.
Ichigo muttered and heard Zangetsu chuckle a bit. Then his eyes widened.
Ah man, and I kinda like the Resurrection, it looked so cool. Zangetsu only chuckled more.
Well, you have to make sacrifices sometimes.
Like I don't know that already. Wait, we wandered a ways from the original question. Why is it that I can't use my Bankai? I remember you saying that this time it won't be like then. So, it won't be that harsh training?
Ichigo could almost feel the nervousness radiating from his inner spirit. Something like that. In fact, there is no need for any training at all.
What?
He almost fell off the bed in surprise.
I admit, I lied before. You have already earned the right to use your Bankai. Right now it's just me that's preventing you from using it.
Ichigo punched the wall behind him in frustration.
Damn it, Zangetsu. That's low and you know it. Yes, but I'm doing it for your own good.
If you used your Bankai now, you'd have it with your hollow powers within it.
And that's the problem. There is still something you don't know about yourself, Ichigo, about your roots.
There is still one dormant power within you that you must awaken and accept before your Bankai is truly complete. If you were to use your Bankai before that, it would only make things harder for you.
Ichigo blinked twice to sort his mind. Say again? Another power? What am I, a freaking cocktail? What is that power?
In his mind, he heard a heavy sigh. You will probably hate me for that, Ichigo, but it isn't something you should hear from me, so I won't tell you.
When you are finished here, in Hueco Mundo, look for your father and let me talk to him. I will force him to explain everything.
When he told you about him being a Shinigami, I was sure that I would have more time to prepare you for it, so I told you not to ask him more, but now that you have awakened your true Zanpakuto powers, waiting is no longer an option.
Ichigo gritted his teeth and tried to calm down. My dad knows?
Oh, his face will bite the dust as soon as I see him, so you won't tell me more, huh? Fine, Zangetsu, have it your way. I'll trust you this time, but you're on thin ice now.
One more thing, what about my Shirkai? I shouldn't use Bankai before awakening and accepting that power, or it would cause problems, but I can use my Shirkai? It kind of doesn't make sense.
Shirkai, as you should already know by now, is only the initial release.
However, Bankai is a final release in which the Zanpakuto gains its truest form.
Once the Bankai is achieved, it is impossible to change, you being the only exception thanks to your incomplete powers.
Shirkai can be molded, that's why there is no problem if you use it. Zangetsu replied.
Ichigo threw his arms in the air and grimaced.
Fine, I give up. He thought and cut off their link. How can I have another dormant power inside of me, without knowing it?
I always knew I wasn't normal, but this is way beyond that.
I understand that I inherited my Shinigami powers from Dad, and after his explanation, I know where my hollow powers are coming from. What other power can there be? Ichigo bit his lip, thinking hard. Quincy? Yeah, right, Yuria would know if I was one. Bount? That's creepy to even think about it. What more is there, some kind of hell powers?
He grimaced in disgust.
God, I hope not, Gah. I don't know. He yelled mentally and scratched his head. I guess there is no point in thinking about it. I'll finish things here and then I'll find out for sure.
His thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door.
Who is it?
Ichigo propped himself on the elbows and watched as Lilynette opened the doors and hesitantly looked at him.
Can I come in?
Ichigo raised his eyebrow but motioned her to come inside. She slowly walked towards him and sat on the floor, next to the bed.
What do you need, Lilynette-san?
She bit her lips, refusing to look him in the eyes.
Nothing really. I'm just used to Stark's presence next to me and I hate to be alone.
You're the only guy here, so I thought maybe I could relax better if I came here.
I'm not counting Grimjo, of course. I hate that animal.
Ichigo smiled a little and lied back down.
Anything I can do to help.
They stayed in silence for a moment, with Lilynette glancing at him a few times.
Go ahead and ask. I can almost feel that you want to know something.
Ichigo said with closed eyes.
Lilynette looked at him in surprise. You never answered my question back there. Why did you help us, the Arankars? We were your enemies. We are still your enemies since you're a Shinigami. Aren't you worried that one of us could decide to kill you in your sleep? Do you plan on killing me? He asked after a while. No. Of course not. You saved me and for that I'm grateful. She quickly replied. Well. Then everything's fine, isn't it?
When Ichigo felt some weight on the bed, he opened his eyes and turned his head.
Lilynette was kneeling next to the bed with her hands lying on the edge of the bed. Why? Why are you being so nice? Why are you so trusting? I don't get it.
She yelled at him, looking at the ground. He sighed and seated himself in front of her.
I'm not trusting nor am I nice. I simply chose to believe that you are good. I'm not like other Shinigami simply because I have been one only for some months and I'm still alive as a human. Why should I think you would do any harm to me?
What I see here, in Hueco Mundo, is simply a group of people, trying to survive.
Every single one of you lost something.
A comrade, trust, all of you carry some burden.
Just because you are hollow doesn't mean you are some savages. In the past I believed so, but only because I was told that. Through my experiences I learned otherwise. In Hueco Mundo, there are monsters just like everywhere else. Humans, Shinigami, hollows. We are all just souls in a different costume.
I value my humanity more than anything, that's true, but at the same time, I don't consider myself as something more as Shinigami or a hollow. I helped you, Harabelle and her fraction, because you're a living being, nothing more.
But at the same time, I decimated those Ajuchas that attacked them. Why didn't I spare them? Because I know that by purifying them, I gave them a new chance at life. It was my decision, as is everything I do. I choose what to do. I don't simply follow the rules. If I don't agree with something, I won't do it.
He turned to Lilynette with a warm smile.
You just lost the most precious person in this world.
There was nobody else you could trust, so you're free to not believe anything I just said.
You are right.
There probably aren't many Shinigami who would treat you like a friend.
What do you know about losing someone?
She snapped at him. Ichigo's smile faltered a bit, but he tried to keep it.
He looked up and stared her in the eyes.
My mother was killed by a hollow in front of me when I was a kid. He said and watched as Lilynette's eyes widened in surprise and she jumped away.
Bibi, but that's even more reason for you to hate us, hollows.
She pointed a shaky finger at him.
It wasn't you who did it. Should I condemn every hollow for the actions of one?
He shook his head.
I'm past the anger I felt.
Sure, if I'd met the one who did it, I wouldn't hesitate and kill him instantly, but I'm now mature enough to not blame the rest of the hollows.
Lilynette stared at him and dropped to the ground. I miss him,
she said suddenly, forcing Ichigo to look at her.
Yeah, there isn't a day when I don't miss my mom too, but at least the pain subsided. Give it time, it's exactly as they say. Time heals.
He absent-mindedly patted her on the head, making her look up at him with teary eyes. Her lips trembled as she noticed his gentle smile and the dam with her feelings broke.
You wah!
She jumped at him and started to cry heavily, soaking his clothes with her tears. Ichigo was surprised at her actions, but remembering his sisters, he didn't push her away, instead he pulled her into embrace.
It's gonna be fine. Just let it out, he said gently and patted her back.
She clutched his arms, sobbing quietly. Trying to soothe her, he started to rock her back and forth, just like a baby. It seemed to be working, as after a while, her sobs became softer and her grip got a little bit looser. When the waterfall of tears finally stopped, Ichigo wanted to release her, as he was sure that she'd be embarrassed, but she stopped him.
Don't,
she muttered and buried her head deeper in his chest. Ichigo almost blushed when he felt something small and squishy on his stomach but forced it away.
Damn hormones. It's just breasts, for God's sake.
She needs some support, not a blushing idiot. After a moment he heard her mumble something.
Sorry, I couldn't understand. I asked if I could sleep here. It's comfy and I don't want to be alone, she mumbled.
The blush was back again, forcing its way onto Ichigo's cheeks.
Sure, if you want to, he replied, feeling a bit awkward. Thanks.
She mumbled quietly, and after a few more minutes, Ichigo heard a peaceful snoring, indicating that the small Arrancar was already asleep.
I could use some sleep too,
he thought and closed his eyes, slowly drifting into sleep himself. He awoke at the movements of a small weight on his chest. Groggily, he opened his eyes, lifting his head a little, to see the green-haired Arrancar still lying on the bed, hugging him in her sleep. Those movements were actually caused by her head, trying to shift itself into a more comfortable position and burying itself into his chest more. Lilynette's mouth was a little bit open, a peaceful expression on her face, and her cheek pressed on him, pushing some drool out of her mouth, causing Ichigo to grimace a little. He was considering waking her up as he didn't want to be covered in her saliva, but remembering the difference in her crying face the day before and the expression she had right now, he decided to let her sleep for a bit longer. Observing her steady breathing, he couldn't help but notice more of her features.
She is kinda cute.
He thought and almost wondered why he wasn't freaking out, since he slept in the same bed with a girl. Inattentively, he stroked her short green hair, thinking about his sisters and how they were doing back in the world of the living. Being so deep in thoughts, Ichigo hadn't noticed that Lilynette opened her eyes and has been studying him intensively ever since he put his hand on her head. You didn't strike me as a guy who would behave so familiarly towards a girl he met only a few hours before. She broke the silence and made Ichigo's head snap in her direction with wide eyes and pink cheeks. He almost instantly retracted his hand from her head. Sorry, I was thinking and paying no attention to what I was doing. She grinned and caught his hand.
I didn't say it was bothering me. Actually, it feels kinda nice.
Oh, okay. Ichigo said and continued to stroke her head awkwardly. They lied in silence for a while, Ichigo nervously looking around and Lilynette mumbling in delight.
You know. I realize that this is weird.
I too, hardly know you, yet I'm here, lying on you, and letting you touch me.
Maybe it's because of your Ryatsu that you've given me. When I'm near you, I feel relaxed. You are probably freaking out in your mind, aren't you?
She muttered loud enough for him to hear her and watched as he nodded shortly.
Why aren't you? Ichigo asked back.
She shrugged and turned her head on her other cheek.
I may look like this, but I'm a lot older than you are. You shouldn't treat me as a little girl.
Was the only thing she said, and another silence fell on them.
So if you know that I'm a little bit freaking out, could you move?
Ichigo asked her hopefully.
No, you're really comfy. She shot back, silencing him again. I don't understand you. Yesterday, when you noticed that me, a Shinigami, is in the same room as you were almost ready to attack me, and now you're telling me that you're miraculously feeling relaxed next to me? Ichigo asked again.
This time, she sighed and propped herself on him and stared him in the eyes.
I'm asking myself the same thing. It's not like I suddenly like Shinigami or anything.
Last night you told me that it was your decision to trust us, Arankars.
This is the same thing.
I decided to trust you, at least a tiny bit.
She grimaced a little and lied back down.
Now that Stark's dead, I have no one. Sure, there's Harabelle and her Fraction, and from what I can tell, Neliel's Fraction is here, and that means that she's probably here somewhere too, and all of them are nice and funny, but
I need something else.
You helped me, gave me your own Ryatsu, you listened to me, and you didn't push me away when I cried. To me, a hollow, it's something that happens once, maybe twice in a lifetime. Ichigo scratched his head nervously.
You're welcome? Ah, you work really fast, Lilynette.
Only a few hours and you're already in bed with him.
I'm almost jealous. Neela Rose's voice interrupted their talk.
Ichigo jerked himself and turned to the doorway, where Harabelle's Fraction stood chuckling and blushing a little at the slightly intimate position the two of them lay in.
Harabelle stood next to them with an unreadable expression on her face.
Hey Ichi, I'm Dash. Nell showed up suddenly, still a bit bandaged, and when she noticed Ichigo and Lilynette together in bed, she widened her eyes comically and gasped.
Oh Ichi! How could you, she's just a little girl! She exclaimed in an accusing voice.
It took Ichigo only a few seconds to understand what she meant, and he jumped from the bed, shaking Lilynette from himself in the process, with the red face.
What are you talking about? It's not like that, I swear. She just didn't want to be alone. Wait, what are you doing here, Nell? Are you okay?
He yelled nervously. Nell flashed him a smile, while Harabelle Fraction started to openly laugh at him. I'm fine, Ichi, but you're already cheating on me. She wiped a virtual tear from her face and giggled at Ichigo's stunned face.
Give it up.
Once she starts with it, she won't stop until you admit something.
Lilynette told him while brushing herself from the dust. But so you know, Neliel-sama, nothing happened, we just slept.
She told the madly giggling Nell, who nodded in response.
Oh Lilynette, you look so cute now that you're a bit grown up. Nell exclaimed after she finally stopped giggling. Right? Aren't I cute? And look at that, I finally have boobs. Lilynette proudly showed her chest with 2 medium-sized lumps on it.
They laughed together, and when everybody left the room, Ichigo finally moved.
Women.
He shook his head in exasperation. He almost bumped into Nell, who was waiting for him outside of the room.
Thank you, Ichi.
She whispered and briefly hugged him.
For what?
He blinked in surprise.
For helping Lilynette.
I thought that she'd be depressed after learning that Stark was dead, but it seems that she's fine. You can say whatever you want to, but I'm sure that it is thanks to you, she said with a wide smile. Ichigo opened his mouth to protest, but seeing Nell's happy face, he rather shook his head.
Yeah, no problem. And that is all I can say about Kurosaki Ichigo, master. I see.
It was only hours after the group of Ajuchas attacked the survivors of the Winter War, living in the Las Noches, that their leader, masked Vasto Lord, completed his report to his master.
So the rumors of your strength are true, Kurosaki Ichigo.
You are indeed worthy of being the one who could bring the new era. Humanoid figure, hidden in the shadows that everyone called the master, thought in wonder. You are, however, not yet ready for what's going to come. If you are to be the successor, you have to abandon this ridiculous thought of being a Shinigami, otherwise he will have to force it out of you. He was sitting on his small throne without any sort of movement, making his subordinates nervous.
What should we do, master?
Vasto Lord on his right, with the thin body but with huge and long arms, ended with claws, asked, bowing his head as low as he could. He gulped when he noticed that his master tilted his head a little and let some light fall onto his face, showing his terrifying grin.
Do nothing.
He will come here, and when he does, we'll have fun.
Meanwhile, in the former residence of Aizen Sasuke, Las Noches, the small group of its tenants met up in the main hall. It was the same room the Shinigami mastermind used for his meetings with his own subordinates, the Espada.
So, what did you want to talk about, Harabel-san?
Ichigo asked the ex-Espada, sitting on his left with a neutral expression.
She glanced at him and pointed at the doors.
We're still waiting for Nilil-san and Grimmjow. You think he'll come?
Ichigo looked at her in disbelief. The blonde sent him an almost invisible wink.
Oh, believe me, he will come.
He almost wanted to ask her for an explanation, when loud voices interrupted him.
Get off me, woman. I said I wanted to be alone.
Now, Grimmy, be a good boy, or I'll have to punish you. Ichigo turned his head to Harabel and her fraction, who were trying to keep their composure, but failing miserably, with a gaping mouth.
Is that Nell and Grimmjow? Since when are they so friendly with each other?
He muttered in surprise.
And did she just call him Grimmy?
Oh, I'll have to remember that. That's pure gold blackmail material.
Nilil-sama seems to like cats very much, and since Grimmjow's resurrection is Pantera, well.
Apesai answered him with a twitching mouth, trying to contain her chuckles.
Well, I'll be damned.
Ichigo thought and watched as the dynamic duo finally arrived at the scene. Sorry we're late, but Grimmy was playing Grumpy Cat and didn't want to come. Nell apologized, patting Grimmjow on the head. When the said Arrancar spotted Ichigo sitting next to the Harabel, his face reddened and steam seemed to come out from his ears. He turned to Nell and growled.
I told you not to call me that. And I'm a panther, goddammit, not a cat.
He growled again when he heard a small chuckle escape Ichigo's mouth.
Something you want to say, Kurosaki? You're lucky that I'm in no mood for killing. Ichigo held up his hands in defense.
Nah, I'm just surprised you're here.
Grimmy.
He smirked at the blue-haired Arrancar.
Grimmjow widened his eyes and a dark look settled on his face.
Oh, you will pay for that, Kurosaki. He started to chuckle quietly, but evilly. He stopped, however, when he felt a hand on his shoulder and a chill ran through his spine. Turning his head, he gulped as he came face to face with smiling Nell, who was giving off a dangerous aura.
What did I tell you, Grimmy? Be a good boy and don't make me punish you,
she whispered into his ear. Ichigo watched them silently and gulped just like Grimmjow, when he felt the strange vibe coming from the usually childish Arrancar.
Damn, she can be scary. It's almost like she isn't Nell. He glanced at Grimmjow. It looks like the bastard went through some punishment already. I almost pity the fool. Neliel, Grimjow, take a seat. We should discuss our course of action towards those who attacked us. Harabel greeted them and motioned them to sit down, which they, in Grimjow's case begrudgingly, did. You have something in mind? Nell asked her with interest.
Yes, since we all think that this attack was orchestrated by somebody else and it's probably only one of many, I think we should find their hideout and take the fight to them.
Harabel replied after a moment of silence. Lady Harabel?
Her Frachin looked at her in surprise, and they weren't the only ones.
Ichigo and Grimjow were too shocked. The blonde former Espada was probably the most peaceful among them, besides Nell, and now she wanted to initiate an attack?
The longer we let them gather their forces, the worse it'll probably get.
You saw it during the attack too.
That Vasto Lord let his subordinates be killed without batting an eyelash. That means he must have a way to gather more of them.
He only interfered when it looked like we were going to win.
Something is fishy about all of this, so the sooner we solve this, the better.
I agree that something's off about it, but do you really think we should be the one to invade them? What if it's some sort of trap? Ichigo objected. That's why only the strongest of us would go.
Harabel replied inside when her Frachin started to yell at her, infuriated with the decision.
Girls, I'm sorry, but I can't let you go.
We may have to face not a Juches but Vasto Lord, and no matter how high I think of you, you wouldn't stand a chance against one.
Not to mention if there would be more of them. Even I can only take on one or two at once,
she said, trying to calm her Frachin down.
I agree, my Frachin will stay here too. It will be tough on us too.
Me, Harabel-san, Grimjow and Ichigo are strong, but even we will be in trouble if they have more Vasto Lord,
Nell stated in a serious voice.
Ichigo sighed and rubbed his temples. What I'm more worried about is their master, that the Vasto Lord, who was with those attacking Ajuches, mentioned.
If he's strong enough to be commanding Vasto Lord, I have no idea who that could be.
He frowned when he heard Grimjow snort.
You're afraid, Kurosaki?
Don't worry, if you'll pussy out, I'll kill him myself, Grimjow said confidently.
I'm not afraid, but think about it.
The only person that we know of, that commanded a group of Vasto Lord, was Aizen, and you all know how freakishly strong that guy was. Ichigo shot back, earning grim expressions from the occupants of the room. That's true, well, you did defeat Aizen after all, so what are we worried about, right? Nell smiled at Ichigo, who smiled back, but in his mind he was concerned.
Yeah, I defeated Aizen, but right now I'm without my Bankai.
I'm confident that I could take down someone of Aizen's caliber even with only my Shurikai, probably, well, at least the Aizen without Hogyoku, but I don't like it. Right now, we mainly need to find the location of their hideout. Grimjow, you wander through the Hueco Mundo most from all of us, so I'm leaving this task to you. You're strong enough to defend yourself even if you came up against one Vasto Lord, so you should be able to do it. Harabel glanced at Grimjow, who smirked confidently. Clever girl, aiming at his pride will make him do it regardless of his opinion, Ichigo thought with his own smirk. You can go out immediately after we finish this meeting. You're smart enough, so I trust you'll be able to find something in 2 days. Even if you can't find anything, report back so that we know you're still alive. Harabel looked back at her Frachin. Meanwhile, the three of us will try to prepare for the attack. I have something I want to try, so if anyone wants to find me, I'll be training with girls.
She met everyone's eyes and nodded.
That's everything. She stood up and left the room with her Frachin.
Ichigo glanced at Nell, who was whispering something into Grimjow's ear.
He couldn't hear anything, but whatever it was, it made Grimjow turn red and he ran away with the speed of sound, leaving Nell giggling madly.
Nell? Since when were you and Grimjow friends? Ichigo asked her, bewildered.
She grinned wildly.
Well, since I saw his resurrection. I mean, isn't he cute with those cat ears?
She asked him with a smirk, startling Ichigo with the image of Grimjow with cat ears. When he tried to imagine it, he started to laugh madly.
Haha, I bet he wasn't very happy about it.
She flashed him a wide smile.
Oh, he wasn't. But I persuaded him to do his resurrection for me a few times.
Suddenly Ichigo gulped when he remembered the strange aura she gave off before and understood how she did it.
Alright, so you're now what? Friends? Nell just whistled. Maybe. She winked at Ichigo and left the room, leaving him alone. Women.
He shook his head and departed to his room too. When he opened the doors to his temporary room, he immediately noticed that Lilynette was once again there, sitting in a chair and swinging her legs in boredom. He contemplated sending her away, but he admitted that even if he still considered her behavior weird, her company kept him from thinking about other things.
So, what was so freaking important that I couldn't even attend that meeting?
She asked him without alerting him that she knew of his presence.
Even if you could have been there, you wouldn't go because you'd consider it boring.
Ichigo replied, making her snort in amusement.
Yeah, don't change the subject. Ichigo put his Zanpakuto near the bed and lied down.
We are going to strike those who attacked you yesterday, he said, earning a raised eyebrow from the small Arrancar. She was told earlier that day about the incident by Nell, with Ichigo's help, who added the information about what happened after Nell escaped to the world of the living.
Really? When are we going to do it? She asked in excitement.
Ichigo frowned and turned his head to her.
First of all, you are not going.
He pointed his finger at her and watched as she jumped in anger.
What? Who decided that? Why?
Seeing that she wouldn't calm down, Ichigo motioned her to sit back down and listen to him. Ultimately, it was Harabel-san's decision, but I completely agree with her. It will be just me, Nell, Grimmjow and her who's going to go.
Even Harabel-san Frachen won't go.
We are even considering the fact that this could eventually result in some sort of trap and the four of us are strong enough to take on even Vasto Lord by ourselves.
Do you think you could handle one alone?
She almost instantly retorted back but bit her lip to stop herself and hesitantly shook her head.
It's not that we think you are weak. It's just that we think they may be too strong.
Everything about yesterday's attack smells fishy and we can't take enough precautions as it is.
Maybe we won't even go, since everything depends on whether Grimmjow can find any clue about their whereabouts or not.
We're awaiting his return 2 days from now and then we will know more. Eventually, Lilynette calmed down after rethinking the whole situation. She was still angry about being left out of the operation, but considering the threat they may come across, she reluctantly leaned back to the chair and started swinging her legs again. You know, leaving something this important to Grimmjow will only come back and bite you in the ass, she stated and grinned at Ichigo, who, with a small grin himself, agreed with her.
Yeah, well.
I'm not that familiar with Hueco Mundo. Harabel-san is apparently too valuable, as she's now considered to be the leader of this place and Nell should be still resting from her injuries. Even Grimmjow shouldn't be moving around too much, but he's crazy enough to ignore everybody. And something tells me that he's burning with revenge for his loss against those Ajuchas and wants to settle the score. Lilynette nodded, as it seemed that everyone was aware of Grimmjow's pride.
And maybe he wants to avenge Nell's injuries too? They are behaving somewhat differently to each other, or am I just thinking too much? Ichigo thought. I'm bored. What are we going to do? You have 2 days free, we should do something fun. Lilynette whined and kicked her legs up.
It shook Ichigo out of his thoughts and he suddenly grinned deviously at her, to which she reacted by backing a little from him. Oh, since you are aware of the fact that you're no match for Vast Lord, maybe I should train you a little bit. He started to chuckle and Lilynette widened her eyes as he closed the distance between them.
Maybe I should have been quiet. She gulped.
During the next 2 days, Ichigo kept his word and worked Lilynette's ass off. Since he still couldn't use his own Bankai, he took the opportunity to train himself too, wanting to get more familiar with the unique abilities of his Shurkai and the nature of his Zanpakuto. It resulted in squeezing every bit of energy out of Lilynette and she always dozed off immediately after they returned back to Ichigo's room.
That was another thing.
Ever since the first time she came to him that evening, after she woke up from her coma, Lilynette never went back to her old room and stubbornly decided to stay with Ichigo all the time. Against his protest she even slept with him, using him as a pillow without any shame. Being a teen not even 18 years old, Ichigo was disturbed by this kind of behavior and reprimanded her that he was a man and that if he was a scumbag, he could have taken advantage of her in her sleep, to which she simply responded,
"But you are not a scumbag and you won't do it."
Making him feel a little bit touched by her trust. After the third night, he grudgingly had to admit that her innocent actions slowly got to him and he was feeling a lot relaxed, even with her, partly lying on him. She was not like Yoruchi or other women he knew that tried to tease him, and she simply enjoyed his presence.
It was new to him and he liked it.
He was still worried that it was because of her sudden loss of Stark, but after their first talk, she never brought up the fallen Primera to any conversation, so he left the topic alone. It was when Ichigo talked to his inner spirit about better use of his darkness element, with Lilynette lying on the bed, sprawled across his stomach, when Harabelle barged in. She raised only one eyebrow at the scene in front of her and looked Ichigo in the eyes.
"It's time," Grimjaw's back and he found out where that Vasto Lord returned to after the attack. Ichigo felt Lilynette tense a bit and nodded. "Good. It's time for a counterattack."
That wraps up this part of What If Ichigo Awoke His True Powers.
Thanks so much for listening.
As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well.
See you in the next one.